Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So first and foremost, I would like to wish all of you a very happy new year, and also especially for Ramakrishna devotees. For them, it is a doubly sacred day. It's not just a new year according to the English calendar, but it's also a day which is popularly known as the Kalpataru Day. So, welcoming the new year is a cultural tradition in many countries. We have different countries, different nations, different cultures, different geographical locations celebrating New Year in a different way, especially those who consider January 1st to be the new year. That is, if we follow the Gregorian or the English calendar. But there are certain countries, especially India, where there are so many New Years. We have in South India a New Year which normally falls in April. It is known as Gudi Padwa. And there are some New Years which fall in different seasons. For example, the Gujaratis, Gujarati is a part of Western India. They follow it on the day just after Diwali. So there's a huge difference. Some people follow it in April and different days. So it began in on New Year's Day. Many Christians pray to God to pray to God to support or to strengthen their resolutions. So one of the important things that people try to do from the subjective point of view or from the spiritual point of view is this is the day when we make certain resolutions. Sometimes the resolutions are spiritual in nature, sometimes they are just trivial resolutions that I'll not eat a particular food. They may be very gross, but for spiritual people, taking up resolving to follow the spiritual pursuit in a particular way is their way of celebrating the new year. So in the Ramakrishna tradition, many of the householder devotees who somehow felt that the incident that happened in Kashipur on 1st January of 1886, that was significant for them because you all know it happened to be a new year as well. And because Calcutta was the headquarters of the British rule in India, the British Empire, so naturally they also celebrated the new year the way it is celebrated in the West. So that is nothing new. That was not something new to the Calcutta people who were compared to the rural India more westernized, so to say. And they followed all the days which normally, like Christmas also, a lot of people, whether they were Christians or not, there is a tradition that they followed Christmas Eve, especially Christmas Eve. And New Year was one such day which uh, some of the Hindu merchants who were westernized, of course, they did not believe in following their own New Year according to the Hindu calendar. They would go to the places of worship they were accustomed to and start new account books, thinking that will bring prosperity. But most of the approaches, most of the resolutions that we do, that we take on this particular day, they are somehow connected with various worldly pursuits. For example, some people want to improve their physical well-being. And they said, okay, from 1st January, we will eat healthy food, try to lose weight. Obviously, those who want to lose weight, they think 1st January is a good day. And some people perhaps think that quitting alcohol or smoking or some such thing which they consider to be harmful for their physical well-being, they take resolutions. There's nothing wrong in that. Any resolution, if it is a positive resolution, it is good. Then some people decide that we will try to improve the way we interact with people because it helps our mental being, our mental well-being. So they understand that there were certain faults that they have committed because of which their mind used to be disturbed or depressed throughout the year. So he said, oh, now we'll take a new resolution. We'll keep our mind healthy. We'll try to think positively, laugh a little more often because laughter, they say, is the best medicine. Sometimes if you see Sri Ramakrishna's life, who was a Kalpataru, he used to make people, whenever people came to Dakshineshwar or also later on to Kashipur, though he was sick, they saw a kind of abode of joy. So in Bengali, they say Majar Kuti, means a market of joy, or a mart or a marketplace where there is a lot of joy, festivity, and all those things. So, from a spiritual point of view or a mental point of view, thinking positively, trying to be light-hearted, joking, and apparently in a gross way, trying to laugh and enjoy life. Though it is not deep enough, it's not the real joy, but at least it gives you an impression or an idea that what real joy could be. If external joy is so, it makes you so happy, then how much will internal joy make you happy? And then some, of course, people who are want to improve their career, they want, or their studies. Some children think that from today I will study a lot, I will get better education. Unless I take some resolutions to work hard, I'll not be successful. So there are so many other things which people resolve to do on this day. There's nothing wrong. But there are some people who try to find out, use this day, especially those who believe that the day is a day when Sri Ramakrishna blessed a lot of devotees. So some householders believed that he became a Kalpataru. Now, if you see the meaning of Kalpataru, it's a mythical tree. We do not know if such a tree exists, but in the Puranas, there is a tree. Kalpa means to make some resolution. Sankalpa. Sankalpa is a firmer resolution. Kalpa means just an imagination. So you make sankalpa. For everything, you have to make a resolution or a sankalpa. For even before beginning puja, the ritual of puja, it is incomplete unless you make the proper sankalpa, because you should be aware of the fact, or you should know why you are doing puja, why you are doing a particular ritual. So it was made mandatory in the Hindu tradition, in the Vedic tradition, that before starting any new endeavor, or especially rituals, Vedic ritual or some other ritual, Puranic ritual, so before that kind of puja or worship, you have to make a sankalpa, otherwise it does not give you the necessary result. Because then if you make a sankalpa or if you make a resolution, then the puja goes on very well and you can get the benefit of whatever resolution you had made. You reach that conclusion, reach that goal. So that is how it is a Kalpataru is imagined to be. For example, some people have certain gross wishes which they want to attain. They want success, they want money. So they go and make sankalpas. There are various ways. It's not just the Kalpataru. There are many other methods which uh, enable a person who wants some worldly benefit and he turns to religion or religious rituals to get that benefit so that he can lead a apparently happy life. That's what he thinks. He says, if I do this, for most of the people, religion is just something which enables them to fulfill their wishes or fulfill their sankalpas. They pray to God perhaps for making their resolutions, making them more resolute in the sense that they can follow their resolutions, not just make resolutions, but follow these resolutions with a firm determination. And they feel that they need not human help, but divine help. So they go turn to God, and those resolutions, depending on what resolutions you make, you get the necessary fruit. So our Vedic religion did not say that all the resolutions have to be spiritual, but the result which you get if you make worldly resolutions is limited. So spirituality insists that if you want temporary benefits, temporary joy, temporary happiness, go ahead and make those gross resolutions which will help you to achieve certain things in the world. After having enjoyed that, then you realize that, oh, I should have made a higher resolution because this is of no use. I prayed for this, I even got it, but then I feel now I need something bigger. Then you again go to God, make another resolution, a slightly higher resolutions, because that is how your evolution takes place. So after repeated births, you end up making higher and higher resolutions and higher sankalpas. Your puja also changes. The way you worship also changes. It begins with a tamasic puja, then slowly it becomes sattvic puja, sattvic worship, then it becomes rajasic. You have certain ambitions, you have certain targets, goals to meet in life, and finally you feel that even those things are temporary. The name and fame, the wealth, and all those things, when you realize that you made those resolutions, you held on to those resolutions, got whatever benefit you wanted from the ritual or the puja or the worship or whatever you did, helped you to achieve those results. But after having achieved those results, you find that this is not sufficient. Somehow it's not making me happy. So we take higher resolutions. Swamiji used to say that a small child, perhaps he likes gingerbread a lot. And he thinks, well, if he has to pray to God, he'll pray for gingerbread or some other sweet. And if he gets it, he thinks, well, there are many people who are eagerly waiting gifts from Santa Claus. And they're so happy as if they have got what they wanted in life. They're excited to open the gifts that they have got from Santa Claus. And then you find that as they grow, these gifts do not have much meaning in their lives. You can't see elderly people going and trying to get some joy by getting gifts from, because they know, after all, these are not the things that are important in my life. I have greater ambitions. I have developed greater maturity. I am not going to be fooled with the little toys and small gifts. I want higher gifts, better gifts, maybe a car or some nice job. So they accordingly make different resolutions. But many of them, or most of them, still go to God, still go to whichever God they believe in. And they try to fulfill their desires or sankalpas, as it is known. Sankalpa, short form is kalpa. So kalpataru, according to the Indian mythology, it is a tree under which you just have to go and wish, make some wishes. And the moment you make that wish, it is immediately fulfilled. Sooner or later, it is fulfilled. So Sri Ramakrishna used to give an example that he said, you be careful. if you go under this Kalpataru and make some wishes, you better be careful what you wish for. If you go there with an uncontrolled mind and go on making wishes, the Kalpataru will simply fulfill your wish. What he wanted to say, uh, what he actually meant to say was that by this parable, first I'll talk about this parable. So he says there was a person who was almost lost in a jungle, in a deep forest, and he wanted to find a way out. He was terrified because it was getting, the day was getting, evening was approaching, and he thought some wild animals will kill him, and he had somehow lost his way. Then he comes across this mythical Kalpataru. So he said, why not go under it? Anyway, he was feeling very hungry also. So he said, oh, what a wonderful luck that I am under this tree. I just have to make a resolution and it will be fulfilled immediately. And Sri Ramakrishna says that person was very hungry. So it said, if I get some nice food. So immediately his wish was fulfilled and he got some food. Of course, this is just a story, but Sri Ramakrishna wants to show what happens if we do not make the right wish. So immediately his wish was fulfilled. He had the best possible food in front of him, and he had a sumptuous meal. He ate everything, whatever was offered to him by this tree, by the magical tree. Then he thought, oh, I have eaten a lot. Now, of course, I have some time still. So why can't I just take some rest before I proceed? Now that my hunger is, I'm not going to die of starvation. My hunger is fulfilled. I don't have hunger anymore. Why not let me just take some rest? So he was just making that thought came to his mind, and because he was under the tree, he immediately got his wishes fulfilled. And a nice cot with a nice mattress appeared in front of him, and he took nice rest. He was taking rest, and then not only in a waking state but in a dream state, he asked for many other things and he got all those things. So he was very happy. So he was conscious. When he was conscious, he asked only the right thing. But unfortunately, because of eating too much, and he became a bit drowsy. And after he became a bit drowsy, he started dreaming. Now that was his downfall. That's why they say whatever we do when we are conscious is more correct, or we take better decisions if we do anything consciously. But there are certain things which we do unconsciously. We just get carried away by the people around us. So we do many things in our life unconsciously. So unconsciously, you should not end up having a wrong wish. So this is what happened in the case of this particular man. And Sri Ramakrishna says he was just drowsy. He got nice food, nice sleep also because of the wonderful mattress. But unfortunately, there was a lot of fear lurking in him. We discussed this in the Raj Yoga class, that Raga, Dvesha and Abhinivesha. So there are so many likes, Raga. So he liked food, he got it. He liked to rest, he got a mattress because he was under the Kalpataru. Now there are certain things which he hates, and there are certain things which he fears. They are also part of our mental makeup. So suddenly, in a semi-awakened state, he was neither asleep nor, he just out of some kind of strange fear which was inherent in him, in the Sukshma or maybe in the Karana Sharira, in the causal body, the samskaras of fear that a tiger will come and eat me. So hardly had he thought that what will happen now, I am fine, I ate, Kalpataru has fulfilled my desire, but suppose a tiger comes and eats me. The moment he had this thought, he did not even make a sankalpa. He how can one make a sankalpa that let a lion come or a tiger come? Immediately a tiger appeared and he killed that person and ate him. So the moral of the story according to Sri Ramakrishna is, when you don't know what to wish for, we may have many sankalpas, but are we sure that we will make the right wish? Unconsciously, this poor fellow, though he got all the good things, uh, because he made a wish and because he was under the Kalpataru, he made one wrong wish and all his good wishes, the nice wishes he had made and he had enjoyed everything, it came to an end. He was himself destroyed because of one wrong wish. So sankalpas can be good, sankalpas can be evil or harmful also. So in that sense, if we analyze, is Sri Ramakrishna a Kalpataru? I will not go into the details of the incident that took place on that day. Most of you are familiar with what happened. The incident happened when Sri Ramakrishna, uh, who was sick, he was being looked after by many of his disciples. Some of them, most of them were monastic, and they were uh, trying to serve him to the best of their capacity. And most of the monastic disciples on that day, they were in his room, because it was very, very rare that Sri Ramakrishna could come down. He was so weak because these were the last few months of his life. January 1st, this happened, and he passed away in August of the same year. So naturally, he was sick, he was weak, but on some days when he felt better, he used to choose and come down and have a walk in the garden. So that day, the same thing happened exactly around 3 p.m. Indian time. He decided to just have a walk. So he asked some of the householder disciples who had come to meet him. One of them was Girish Ghosh and others. They had all come, but because he was resting, Sri Ramakrishna used to rest on the first floor. If you have seen Kashipur Garden House, the first floor was where he lived. And Holy Mother, of course, she was there. But somebody today asked a strange question. What was mother? Because here we see the householder disciples, we also see the monastic disciples who were doing their job. But what happened? Where was mother on that day? It's a wonderful question which was asked, because I do not, we don't have a record of that. The whole incident, if you see, what exactly was mother doing? Because she was definitely living there, but she was living on the top floor. And as it was usual, the same thing happened in Nahabat also. She was so unfortunate that she could not even meet Thakur because there were so many male devotees. And it was supposed to be a kind of, it was not considered to be modest for a woman to come when there are so many men around. So unfortunately, I think the same thing situation would have prevailed. And she used to live in a room, very small room, which was on the terrace of that Kashipur garden house. And you know, in summer, how hot it can be. So just as she faced lot of difficulties when she was staying in the small 6 by 6 feet, 6 or 8, I'm not very sure. It's a hexagonal room in Dakshineshwar. You will be surprised how she managed to live. Not only live, but keep all the provisions and the cooking pots and everything. Her kitchen, living room, dining room, everything was that. And in that room, she managed for several years when Thakur was in Dakshineshwar. Here, of course, the room was maybe slightly bigger, but it was not at all a comfortable room. So she used to live on the terrace. So I think she was there. Maybe she was doing japa or something, but definitely she was not part of this divine play which happened. So on 1st January, he came. Sri Ramakrishna said, I am just feeling better. He wore a typical green coat. There's a beautiful green coat which is still preserved in the museum. So he wore a dhoti as usual and with a green coat and a nice cap because it was winter. It was January 1st. It was very cold out there. And then he comes down And then we know the incident, what happened. Girish Ghosh and other devotees, Atul, yeah, there were many people there. There is a list of people, I'll not go into the detail. Uh, but they come and they were surprised because they were just waiting for Sri Krishna to finish his afternoon nap. They thought he's tired and then they would have perhaps gone to his room, had his darshan. But because Sri Krishna said that I want to go for a walk, somebody brought him down. The monastic disciples who were there, who were serving him, most of them used to work late in the night. So some of them were taking rest during the daytime. So in turns, they were serving him. So Latu Maharaj and others, Mahapurush Maharaj and all, they saw that this is a good chance. Now Sri Krishna has left the room. So let us quickly clean the room because it was so difficult to clean when he was staying there. So they removed the bed, they took it into kept it on the terrace perhaps where it could get some sun because it was bright sunshine. So they wanted the sun to they want to keep that his mattress in the sun so that it would dry quickly and then they can do all the other things, cleaning and other things. So they were absolutely busy when he came down because they wanted to finish before he returned. They knew he will not be long. And when he goes there, Sri Krishna was in a totally different mood. So when he came in the spot which is now they have planted a mango tree. It's a beautiful mango tree. It's hardly a few hundred yards away from the main building. And he came and suddenly he turned to Girish Chandra Ghosh. They were all sitting there on the lawn or somewhere. All people were scattered. They were in their different places. Only a few people were there. So he turned to Girish and then asked him, see, Girish, I heard that you are going on telling all the people that I am an incarnation and such and such, so many things you are praising me. What have you seen in me that you are going on praising me to the skies? What makes you do that? What have you understood about me? So suddenly, Girish was taken aback. So with folded hands, he kneeled down before Thakur and said, how can I express your greatness? Do you think I have that capacity? He was so humble. He said, Vyasa and Valmiki. Vyasa was one who wrote about the exploits of Sri Krishna and Bhagavata, and of course, he did many other things. But he wrote many other great Shastras. He compiled the Vedas also. They classified the Vedas and gathered them, divided them into 4 Vedas. So Vyasa is attributed with a lot of scriptural authorship of many scriptures. So he wrote some Puranas also. So he says Vyasa and Valmiki. Valmiki, of course, everybody knows, was the composer of Ramayana. So he wrote the biography of Sri Rama. So what Vyasa and Valmiki could not do, you're asking me something impossible. Do you think a fool like me can try to understand what you mean when people say that you are an incarnation? A task which Vyasa and Valmiki found difficult. Do you ever think that I can express it? So Thakur was very pleased. He was pleased for 2 reasons. If for by chance, because in his earlier days, perhaps Girish Ghosh would have, because he was a man full of ego in those days. He was a great writer, definitely a great poet, and he wrote some wonderful dramas, which Sri Krishna asked him to continue also. It's not that he was a novice. He could write wonderful dramas. In fact, the Chaitanya's drama which he wrote, Sri Krishna literally wept when he saw that show. He was a dramatist, so he wrote a drama and he himself acted in some of his dramas. So uh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's drama, which was enacted by Girish Ghosh, was so realistic, and the actress who acted that role, she belonged to a very, not a very dignified class of society, because good people, people who belong to the nobility, they did not normally take part in this acting and all. They thought acting was a profession not very honorable. So that lady who played the role of Chaitanya, women used to take the role of men also. They used to take up any role. So she played it so well that Thakur literally wept when he saw the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's drama, because the dialogue was powerful and the direction of Girish Ghosh was so nice that even an ordinary woman could act in such a way that she brought out the divinity of Chaitanya. And Thakur said, an imitation apple is as good as a real apple. After seeing that, somebody said, this is after all a drama, but if it is enacted well, even this drama, in fact, for avatars, everything is a drama, everything is a divine play. So, divine play, if it is full of the right thoughts, the right spirit, and if the actors do it perfectly, Sri Ramakrishna showed that art can be a great profession. And he praised not only Girish, he said, I want to see that actress who later on became a great devotee. She, in fact, renounced the world. Though she was not considered by society to be a woman of good character, she became such a wonderful person in her later life. She became almost like a nun. Uh, Society did not look upon in a good way and did not consider especially actresses, because to be an actress, no person from a decent family would come and join that profession. It's only people who were culturally not so noble, they would take to this profession. But she had so much of talent and so much of devotion, and Sri Ramakrishna went and blessed her, and through his blessing, she became one of the greatest devotees of Thakur. And throughout her life, she lived long enough. After his passing away, also, she was given a lot of respect, though householders did not give that much respect to her because they did not know better. But whenever she came to Belur Math, Mahapurush Maharaj and all the president of the order used to give her so much respect, because Thakur has respected her and seen the divine in her. And that is just because of some play acting, some drama which she did. And she went into a very high mood when she spoke. So Sri Ramakrishna was so impressed that he felt Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is himself enacting this role, and tears were in his eyes. So it was not that Girish Ghosh was not capable, and he himself, many times he has played multiple roles in his own drama, playing the role of a villain, at the same time playing the role of a hero. Many mythological characters Girish Ghosh himself played. So not that he was not talented, he was one of the most talented playwrights in Indian history. He's supposed to be the father of modern Indian theatre, his star theatre. And Sri Ramakrishna blessed it, not only blessed him, but blessed all the actors and actresses. And they became divine. So when Girish Ghosh became so humble, he was in the initial stages, he was a very proud, and you can't say he was an arrogant person, but he was having some ego that he's such a great playwright and all those things. But after surrendering everything to Sri Ramakrishna, he humbly says, if Vyasa Valmiki cannot describe you, great saints like Vyasa Valmiki, I am such a fallen soul. How can I even attempt to describe your greatness? I am not capable of doing that. So Sri Ramakrishna was perhaps testing his ego, and he found that his disciple Girish Ghosh has developed the right characteristics. He's slowly getting rid of his ego, the asmita, and then slowly all his anger. He was a very, very emotional, and because most of the dramas that he wrote could be very emotional. But in spite of all that, there was a great transformation in Girish Chandra Ghosh. So anyway, Girish Ghosh was responsible on that day to bring out the divinity. Of course, he was just an instrument. Sri Ramakrishna would have anyway showered his grace upon all. But what was the grace that he showered upon all? Some of the devotees later on, after this incident happened, then immediately says he was so happy after listening to Girish Ghosh that at least Girish Ghosh has understood that he doesn't know anything, that I am incapable of understanding. That is true. How can we even claim that we can understand a human being, leave alone a spiritual giant like Sri Ramakrishna? An Avatara is extremely difficult to understand. And Girish Ghosh, that's why he echoed the ideas of most of the devotees, saying that how can we gauge you? How can he even estimate you? If Vyasa and Valmiki, such great rishis, could not describe the glory of Rama and Krishna, Krishna and Rama through their various works, wonderful works, immortal works. If they could not, they themselves said that we have not been able to understand even a little bit of the greatness of Sri Krishna or Rama. If that is the case, a fallen person like me with so many evil habits, how can I understand the glory? So Sri Ramakrishna was so pleased by this humility, and he just blessed. Then he says, what more shall I tell you? And in the meantime, a few people had gathered. When they saw Girish Ghosh sitting in a bowing down and kneeling down in front of Sri Ramakrishna and humbly uh, telling him that what do I know? If your grace is there, you can make it known to all of us. So Sri Ramakrishna immediately went into an exalted state of ecstasy. And in that state, in the highest state, he said, what more can I tell you? I mean, he was himself trying to express something which was inexpressible, but he was keen that somehow I want to reveal my true nature today. And he said, Tumader ar ki bolbo, mane, that is the Bengali. What more shall I tell you? So because Girish Ghosh was pleading and asking him, now you reveal yourself. Our capacity is limited. Then he said, what more shall I tell you? Tumader Chaitanya Hok. So Tumader Chaitanya Hok means may you be illumined. Illumined means may your Chaitanya or the spirit, may your spirit be awakened. That is the literal translation. So the pure spirit which you have forgotten because of illusion or because of avidya or ignorance, may that spirit be awakened. So that's all he said. And seeing that, there was such a surge of spirituality in everybody who was there, whether one deserved or not. That's what Sharadanji says. People, and you see the fun, these people, one or two who saw this at Sri Ramakrishna was just, they were just rolling in ecstasy. They didn't know how that spiritual surge lifted them. So they all called, shouting, somewhere shouting, said, please come, please come. Sri Ramakrishna is in a great mood to give all the treasures. So many people came, many of them, I do not want to discuss how many, but most of them did not know what to ask. Contrary to the popular opinion that on Kalpataru day, there are huge queues. On Kashipur, people think somehow they started this Utsav. Belur Math doesn't celebrate this day. Most of our centers do it, but they just discuss this incident on that day. But Kashipur is the only place, because some householder devotees spread the word that this is the day when Thakur blessed everybody and granted he became a Kalpataru. Now, a lot of people who have gross wishes in Calcutta, perhaps they never come to Sri Ramakrishna or any of the monasteries for any spiritual purpose. But they know, but they think, not know, they think that if we go on this day and make some sankalpa, whatever they want. Some people want money, some people want to get rid of illness. So if we go on that day, then Thakur, somehow Sri Ramakrishna will fulfill our wishes. So with that idea, this year, of course, because of COVID, it has been cancelled for the first time in the history. So many hundreds of 100 years I think have passed. They have been celebrating it after his Mahasamadhi. But this year it has been closed because a lot of devotees would visit, and it will be very difficult to control, to maintain the social distancing and other things. So it has been cancelled here on Kashipur. But on normal days, people would stand in a queue even before midnight, in late in the evening, because this Kashipur darshan would happen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And on the previous night, people used, because otherwise you will not get a chance to go inside during that time. So there would be a huge queue, several miles long, and people would not mind standing at night outside the Kashipur because the gates would be closed. You cannot allow people inside a monastery at night. But early morning, as soon as the gates open, you'll see how people rush to have darshan of Thakur and pray to him for whatever they want. So there is a firm belief that whoever comes on Kalpataru day and prays with whatever wish or desire or sankalpna he has, he will get it. Thakur will bless him and he will get it. So people used to come in large numbers. Even today they come. But the question is Thakur really a Kalpataru in this sense? So today something very interesting happened. I happened to phone somebody to wish a very old devotee of ours, who's more than 95, 96 or 97-year old, and who has definitely read something about Kalpataru, or not something, she has read it thoroughly. And she also knows that this Kalpataru is a day when many people go to Thakur thinking that he will grant their wishes. So naturally, and even the New Year day, people think if we make a resolution on this day, we will be able to stick to that resolution and it will benefit us. So people go, people have that kind of faith that certain days they think is very auspicious, and if we start something on that day, the wish will be fulfilled. So just I asked after wishing New Year, I said today is Kalpataru day, and normally people go and try to make some wishes or some sankalpa they make, thinking that it will. So what sankalpa I hope you are also making? She gave a wonderful answer, which is what I wanted to discuss today. That she says, she gave a very nice answer that shows how she has understood Sri Ramakrishna. In that context, I'm just mentioning this incident, then we'll discuss what actually Sri Ramakrishna did on this Kalpataru day. So she said something in very simple terms. She said, we normally don't know what to wish for, whether the wish that we make is good or bad for us. So I don't think I consider Sri Ramakrishna as a Kalpataru, because I don't know whether I can wish correctly. If that wish is wrong, then it may harm me. And I'm sure Sri Ramakrishna is so gracious and kind that he will grant only those wishes which are good for us. So there's no point in wishing or making any sankalpa on this day. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna knows what I need, what is good for me, not what I want. We in our life, it's a very simple thing, and she perhaps said it very casually, but it has a lot of thought has gone behind this statement of hers. And that is exactly what Swami Sharadanandji discusses in his Great Master, in the Divine Play of Sri Ramakrishna. That are we in a position to really make the right kind of wish? Or are we like that person in the forest who did not know, and finally a tiger came and devoured him? He asked for good things, he got it, he thought, oh, it's a wonderful tree under which I am I have chance to come. I thought of food, I got food. I thought of a nice mattress to rest, I got everything that I thought. I just had to make a sankalpa and I got it. The Kalpataru fulfilled it. But unconsciously, in a semi-awake state, some hidden fear came out, and he thought, if a tiger comes and devours me, eats me. Suddenly a tiger from nowhere came and killed him. So Sri Ramakrishna, when he said this, he actually would not ask people or bless people by granting them what they wish. It is common sense. If Sri Ramakrishna were a Kalpataru in this sense, because Kalpataru cannot be, if you go according to the scriptural definition or the mythical definition of Kalpataru, it literally means whatever you wish, you will get. The wish fulfilling tree. That is how it is translated in the gospel. But if we go under a wish fulfilling tree, without making sure that the wishes that we have are good for us or bad for us, then it can be harmful. Having said that, having said that, definitely Sri Ramakrishna would not fulfill everybody's wishes as people believed he would. He is not of a Kalpataru of that kind, that sort. If he were, there may be certain deities, there may be certain uh, gods or goddesses or minor deities who fulfill your wish. People have so much faith that they will offer certain things. They'll go some temple and say, if I offer coconuts, if I offer this, that, some wish of ours will be fulfilled. And maybe it gets fulfilled also. But will Sri Ramakrishna fulfill such wishes? Or are we capable of wishing the right thing? These are the two questions which were answered by this devotee. She says, since I don't know what to wish, all I know is Sri Ramakrishna will give me what I need, but definitely he will not give me what I wish for. And that shows the kind of spiritual maturity a person has. That is how Sri Ramakrishna would expect his devotees to be. Make a wish, but not make a wish. Leave what you need. The Lord knows perfectly well what we really need, how much we need, to what extent we want certain things in life. So, as Mahatma Gandhi also once said, there is enough in this world for man's need, but there is very little for man's greed. You can't fulfill all the greeds. You may be wanting many things, but greed is never fulfilled. Whereas if the needs are there, according to the Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Kshema Vahamyaham Ananyas Chintayantoma Ye Jana Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham. So Sri Ramakrishna was like Sri Krishna, a person who fulfilled the yoga and the kshema. Yoga kshema means it means it doesn't mean that whatever you want, Lord will fulfill. If he does that, he is not the Lord, he is not the supreme, because no avatar or no God would want you to suffer because of the gift that he gives you. If he thinks that gift is beneficial for you, he will give you. And if he thinks that that gift is going to make him less spiritual or maybe take him away from the goal of life, then if he fulfills it, it will be a crime on his part, or if it will be so bad on his part that a incarnation is misguiding those who are asking him. So even if you ask a wrong thing, if Thakur thinks, if you are really believe in the Ramakrishna incarnation, the significance of this Kalpataru day is that if you make a wrong wish, know it for certain, Sri Ramakrishna will not fulfill it. So in that sense, he cannot be a Kalpataru, because your wish may not be what is good for you. Like Nachiketa was told, Shreya and Preya, That which is pleasant may not always be good, and that which is good may not always be pleasant. So sometimes unpleasant things, when they come, we blame Thakur. Why is Thakur so, uh, is not at all gracious? Why is he giving me so much trouble? But if we have patience, somehow we'll find out that whatever we learned, as Swamiji said, we learn more from pain than pleasure. Because sometimes pleasure comes and increases our ignorance. I'm not saying every time you have to have a painful experience to learn. If one is wise enough, we can learn from pleasure as well. It may come, but it may tempt us, but we will be a bit careful and pray to Sri Ramakrishna and ask him, see, if it is really good for us, you give it to us. Otherwise, I will not be unhappy if you don't give me. That was the attitude which Girish Ghosh or all the people who totally surrendered to him, even Master Masha, he wanted to become he had certain desires in life, or he had certain things to ask. So once or twice he just mentioned, can I do this? Can I do that? Sri Ramakrishna said, no, just stay as you are. I'll take care of everything. So that is how self-surrender uh, is what the message of this Kalpataru day is. So what did Sri Ramakrishna do on this day? If he has not granted any wish, or if he is not a Kalpataru, then what is he? Why is this day significant? Should we ever try to follow or maybe celebrate this day in some way or the other by calling it a Kalpataru day? There's nothing wrong. But who is a true Kalpataru? That we have to understand. Kalpataru is not just, in Sri Ramakrishna's case, he is not the one who is going to fulfill every silly wish of yours or ours. He is not so naive that whatever we ask, we give, and then he will set it right. No, he will be very firm. He will say, this is not good for you and you will not get it. That way, Sri Ramakrishna is a real well-wisher, in the sense that he will not give you that which is harmful. Just as a kind mother or a really concerned mother will not give the child what is harmful for him, Sri Ramakrishna will not grant that which is harmful for his devotee. So what did he do on that day? Now for this we have to go to the Great Master, which we are discussing on Thursday every day. Of course, this incident will come in the 5th volume. I think it will be far off. I mean, that is the last phase of his life. The Divya Bhav and the Naren and the Divya Leela. So that is the 5th part. So in that we will discuss, because those incidents have been described in the last part of his biography. So before going, he gave this blessing, Tomader Chaitanya Hok, may your consciousness or Chaitanya means consciousness, be awakened. So that is the greatest gift. He explained to all these devotees, not only explained, he declared, or he blessed them with this experience. Those who were fit, they got it. Some of them were not fit, they got it, but still they got it. And they came running after a few days. Instead of being grateful, or instead of being ecstatic in joy, they came running, said, you please take away this. I don't want to remain in consciousness. I'm not able to do my duties. I'm not able to fulfill my greed. All the worldly things have gone away from me. There's no joy. You please take it. And Sri Ramakrishna just laughs. This happened in the case of one devotee who said, Thakur, it's very good that you blessed me. I was in joy for some days. But then now that joy has somehow prevented the joy I used to get from all the worldly things. So you please take it back. I'm happy the way I was. So Sri Ramakrishna laughed and said, okay, let it be. So he did not even disturb him, because he knew the time has not come. And perhaps he has to work out some of his karma to understand that the lower joys are temporary. Only when he finishes that, maybe he'll be, of course, towards the end of his life, mm, according to the biography, that devotee came to know that what Sri Ramakrishna had given him was a wonderful thing and he didn't do the right thing by refusing it or trying to ask him to take it back. Same thing happened with Hriday also. Hriday was constantly pestering Sri Ramakrishna for some experience. And when he got it, he got so frightened. Then Thakur said, no, go back to your old state. You don't deserve it. And then he became normal. Then he went after money and all those things. So Sri Ramakrishna definitely knows what to give, what to grant, which wish to grant at what time of a person's life. And then what did he give? This, by saying Chaitamadir Chaitanya Hok, what happened actually? Those who got it and those who deserved it and really felt blessed by that, what happened to them? That is the important question. So some of them, according to Swami Sharadanandji, he says that I would rather not call this as the Kalpataru Divas. I would say this is the day of the bestowal of freedom from fear. Abhaydana. Abhaydana is a very small Sanskrit word, a precise word. But if you want to translate it into English, bestowal of freedom from fear. That is what Sri Ramakrishna did. So what does Swami Sharadanandji mean by that? We'll try to analyze a little bit. There is some time left. I don't know. Yes, we have some time left. We started late. So if you kindly permit, I'll continue for some more time. Let us just conclude this topic. So bestowal of fear. What was the fear about which Swami Sharadanandji was mentioning? He mentioned that bestowal of freedom from fear, Abhaydan, that is how it is translated. So how can he bestow fearlessness or freedom? How can he liberate a person from freedom? What are the freedom? What are the fears that inhibit our freedom, which restrict our freedom? Freedom and fear, they are intimately connected. So you are totally free when you are free from fear. Some people think freedom means if you are free from, if you have a lot of money, you are free. Definitely you are free from the worry of money. That is a very small fear. Okay, if you have a good job, you are free from being unemployed. These are all lesser fears, which we always run after. We want to be secure. So how do we become secure? We think, oh, getting a good job, we are secure. Then you go and say that if I have this kind of bank balance, then I am free from worry. That's what people think. Then suddenly you have a disease, and then you find that in spite of all the money and all the jobs that you have, this disease is just, then you have that fear of death. You have to cure that. Then you solve one after another, these fears come in our life. So that is why Swamiji spoke about fearlessness. So what kind of fearlessness? That fearlessness that comes when you know that you are the spirit and nothing is going to destroy you if you are one with that spirit. That kind of fearlessness is what is meant. The Upanishads also, Swamiji says, speak of only one thing, and that is fearlessness. Now people don't understand. They think fearlessness means if I am a brave person and I can face 2 or 3 people and fight with them, they think, oh, what a fearless person he is. But that same person who may be fearless to fight 2 or 3 people, if some disease comes to him or something happens, then he's shivering with fear because he feels with all my strength I can't save myself. So clinging to life, abhinivesha, means fear of death or or clinging to life. That is a more positive way of expressing fear of death. If we say fear of death, all of us understand, no doubt. But more than fear of life. It is this clinging to this gross life or anything, the whole gross universe, anything that you cling to. If it is gross, it will make you miserable. If you cling to some subtle things, it will also make you miserable, but the intensity is less. If you are still a victim of your causal body, your samskaras, so that fear, oh, maybe I have very bad samskaras, I have some bad karma, that is also a kind of fear. But that fear is justified because you are fearing the uncertain. So that's why some people want some their gurus or maybe uh, spiritual people to tell them, Acha, right now I don't have a problem, but can you tell me something about my future? Am I secure? So many people used to ask our revered President Maharaj and all. And their main question was, right now I have no problem because they have no gross fear. They think they are well off. They have enough money, enough security, everything. And they also mentally are happy because they think we are a very happy family. Everything is going fine now. But still the fear of the unknown. Will this happiness, because I see many of the happy people suddenly become unhappy. Something strange happens in their life. So they want to know, there is some kind of curiosity. Is there something in my karma, the hidden karma, my prarabdha, or some karma which is I am not a sanchita karma, that is prarabdha, you know, because you are suffering. But there are some karmas which are sanchita, which are stored, but you don't know. So the fear of the unknown is one such fear. We just, there are some people who, there are most of us, not some people. That is a legitimate fear because fear of the unknown, even great spiritual people have. It is justified because we do not know what samskaras we have. So that is a justified fear because it is so difficult to go and understand the reason for our causal fears. Causal means they have not yet manifested as mental fears or physical fears, but they are there, a deep rooted fear. That fear is known as clinging to life. They all have their origin because we desperately, Swamiji says, even a worm doesn't like if somebody tries to crush it. It will try its best to somehow escape. You don't have to tell. Take any insect, even a lamb when it is about to be butchered, it's struggling a lot, just trying to somehow survive, cling to that life. But helpless, they are butchered every day. So even the plant and other living beings, this abhinivesh or clinging to life is the root cause of all fear. So that is the fearlessness which Sri Ram Krishna removed on that day. He gave Abhaidan, he gave them fearlessness. Just as Jesus Christ, we spoke about it in during Christmas. Jesus Christ said that, why are you worrying? Many people were, when he was being crucified, taken away, he was just laughing. He was just so casual because he knew nothing can kill the spirit. So where does that fearlessness come? That Abhaidan, that consciousness cannot be killed. As Gita says, it cannot be burnt, it cannot be killed, nothing can happen to it. One has to remain stable in that sthita prajna. One's consciousness should be steady. We discussed about the Holy Mother's life, how stately she was, how calm and collected she was among the various vicissitudes of her life. And we find that that steadiness comes only when you touch the spirit. And that blessing was given by Sri Ramakrishna when he said, let your consciousness be awakened. And those whose consciousness was awakened on that day, they felt a strange release. They felt that they were free. Free from what? Free from fear. That's why Swami Shardanji says he gave them Abhayadana. He gave them the gift of fearlessness, which is the greatest gift an avatara can give us. So on this auspicious day, let us all meditate and pray to Sri Ramakrishna. Whether you call him as a Kalpataru or not, he is there to fulfill or our needs. Definitely he is not there to fulfill our desires or fulfill our wishes, which may not be our need. Whatever we really need to become really fearless, that he will invariably will grant if we approach him with that spirit. And that's the spirit we should have on Kalpataru day. It's a very auspicious day, and I'm sure that if we continuously meditate upon the significance of these wonderful incidents, especially the Kalpataru day, as it is described in the Great Master. There is a masterly description. Of course, because of lack of time, I could not explain everything. But if you see how Swami Sharadanand ji has analyzed and explained the true significance, that is why you find it surprising why Belur Math, our headquarters, does not celebrate this. Because a tradition was started in Kashipur, we celebrate. Once Mahapurush Maharaj was asked, why Sri Ramakrishna is called as a Kalpataru? He said, what Kalpataru? He is a Nitya Kalpataru. For devotees, he is a Nitya Kalpataru. Whether you go, do you think if you don't go on first, he will not bless you? Does he ever leave you? He is not only a Kalpataru on a fixed day, but he is a Nitya Kalpataru if you are really devoted to him. And that is what the message he gave. So that is why we come to that incident where why mother was not there, why not the direct disciples, monastic, who were so dear to Sri Ramakrishna. None of them even came near when everybody was shouting. The householder devotees were all shouting as if they got a great treasure. And Latu Maharaj and all were very quiet there, serving their guru. They knew that that is more important, because they knew, why should we think that on this day alone he will bless us? We are his own. He is a Nitya Kalpataru for us. So they did not come. Neither, even when they heard the commotion, something great was going on. They knew Sri Ramakrishna is there with them eternally. Whenever they want, he will fulfill their needs. So that is the spirit in which we should celebrate this Kalpataru. So I'll just see if there are some questions, and then we'll conclude for the day. No, that there are no questions. So I assume that maybe there are no doubts, because Swami Sharadanand ji has explained in such a way that he has left no room for doubt, for any kind of doubt. Because when Sharadanand ji says this, all what I said is based on the divine play of Sri Ramakrishna, or which is earlier, which was known as Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master. So I play to the Great Master on this auspicious day, Sri Ramakrishna, that may he give us the same, may he bestow upon us the freedom from fear which he gave to those people who had assembled there, who felt they were blessed by receiving that. And also he gave it almost every day to some of his monastic disciples, or to all the monastic disciples felt that we don't have to get any special blessings because he is our own. So as long as we understand Sri Ramakrishna, one who is our Ishta, whoever is our Ishta, if he is within, if we try to meditate on him in our hearts, and if we are remain connected with him and feel that he is the Chaitanya Swarupa, and remember that on Kalpataru he blessed everybody by saying, may you be spiritually awakened, or may you be conscious of your undivided consciousness, which is Brahman, which is within you. If you do that, if we are able to do that, then really all our fears will go, and we'll find ourselves fulfilled, and we'll be ready to reach the goal of life. So with prayers I conclude. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishnaarpanamastu. Wish you all a very happy new year. and also a very happy Kalpataru day. May Sri Ramakrishna bless all of us.